But let's talk a little bit about Erin, because obviously it is a big topic and it's fairly close to home. But I'm here to reassure you that there is not going to be any impacts here in central Georgia directly from Erin. Now, we may have some indirect impacts in the fact that Erin could influence our forecast just a little bit, but anything associated with tropical moisture, anything in the way of some of those winds are really not going to impact us whatsoever. The areas that are going to see some impacts are going to be the Carolina coast and maybe getting up into the Chesapeake Bay area, coastal Virginia, coastal Maryland. And right now, Erin is still at the I believe I just stepped in front of it, 8 a.m. advisories. So we haven't gotten the 11 a.m. advisory in just yet. I imagine that will come out fairly shortly. And of course, you can check in with the latest tropics update on 13wmaz.com, our web story that we have written up for it, or along with that, find it on YouTube. I'll be recording that after I do this extended forecast in order to give you an up-to-date, an update on what Hurricane Erin is doing. But we haven't seen much fluctuation with it, especially the cone. The cone has continued to do a very good job on the potential path of Erin. Right now, 100-mile-per-hour winds, which is good enough for a Category 2 storm, not necessarily a high-end Category 2, because yesterday the winds were up to 110, and that is the last mile per hour that you can reach before crossing the threshold into major hurricane status as a Category 3 storm. But Erin right now is expected to continue to make a northward turn, and then once it gets off the coast of South Carolina and North Carolina, that's when it's going to start to have a more northeasterly direction and start to curve and thread that needle between Bermuda. I don't know if it's about threading the needle, but go in between this area of the island of Bermuda and the mid-Atlantic portion of the United States. Still not going to make landfall on any form of a landmass, but it is a pretty strong storm right now, and it's going to have a pretty large wind field and lots of moisture associated with it. That's why areas on the Carolina coast have been issued in some tropical storm watches and even some storm surge warnings associated with this. So as we go throughout the next couple of days, Thursday into Friday, still a Category 2 storm off the coast of Virginia and Maryland now, and then it continues to move up into portions of northeast Canada, but it won't make any landfall up there. It's just going to move and be simply a fish storm as it goes all the way into the North Atlantic. And then you can see by Saturday morning, it should weaken into a Category 1. And by the time we get into Sunday morning, it should weaken into a remnant low pressure system. But then going into the beginning of next week, it still looks like it's maintaining some form of organization. So you see this right here, 65-mile-per-hour winds. That's obviously still good enough for a tropical storm status, but if this continues to hold together with organization and continue to progress kind of along this path, next in line would be the United Kingdom and areas up there in northern Europe, maybe up into the Iceland area. We'll see if it has any impacts there, but as of right now, that's really far out in the future. But I'm sure those areas are closely monitoring what the cone is going to do. The big thing is it's going to weaken as it moves up into this cooler water in the northern Atlantic Ocean, and it's not going to impact us here in central Georgia. But there are two other areas that we want to keep a close eye on, and we've been talking about them over the last couple of days. There is one system directly behind Hurricane Erin that has continued to progress farther to the west in the Atlantic Ocean. Well, now the big thing that has been inhibiting development with this system has been this dust plume that we see out in the Atlantic Ocean. It has really just had all of that Saharan dust present for quite a while, but still only 10% chances of developing, or 10% chance of developing over the next 48 hours. It does look like once it finally gets out of these last few areas of some dust, it will start to gain its organization, move into a more conducive environment. And that's why you see a pretty high chance of developing past the 48-hour window. So by the time we get into this weekend, it does look like this tropical wave will finally start to get its act together, but it's probably not going to be until it gets into the shaded area. And speaking of the orange shaded area, that's been probably the most notable change with this. It has been following a direct path with Erin. It actually had this shaded area going all the way up into the Bahamas, areas around Turks and Caicos, just like Erin went over. Well, now we see a northern kind of shift in this shaded area, indicating that it's probably going to curve up to the north just like Erin did, but a little bit earlier. So hopefully it's not going to impact any land masses whatsoever, but this could have some implications for any of you if you're planning a cruise maybe possibly over the next week or so. I know Labor Day weekend is coming up very fast, and also down in the Caribbean. So areas like Puerto Rico, the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, all of these islands that are in the northern Lesser Antilles. That's where we are looking at some impacts maybe over the next couple of days, but I don't think it's going to be terribly strong by the time it does make its way over there. And the good news is it's going away from us here at home in central Georgia. But we now have a new update with this tropical wave that's continued to move off the coast of Africa. And yes, there is some dust present, but it's not as big of dust plume as the system ahead of it was dealing with. So we've continued to see increasing chances of development with this moving off the Saharan coast of Africa. Yesterday, it was just south of Cape Verde, so these island nations right over here, and it continues to push over to the west. 40% chance of developing over the next 7 days, which isn't as high as that 60, but it's also got a 40% chance of developing over the next 2 days. So that means this has a greater likelihood of developing sooner than as opposed to the system that is ahead of it. This is something we'll need to be on the lookout for, and obviously it would have a lot of ocean to interact with and could intensify fairly quickly, but this is where it does stand as of 8 a.m. on Wednesday, something we'll continue to keep a very close eye on. And also at that, if this is to even come close to central Georgia, it's going to be about another week and a half, 2 weeks before it really even gets into our neck of the woods. But everything is far from certain about the specific path with this area of potential development. Continue to stay updated, and we'll be continuing to throw these tropics updates out there all the time over the course of the next couple of weeks, because it is getting to be a very active time in terms of the Atlantic hurricane season. As we go into the end of August, we'll eventually cross over into September as we go into Labor Day officially. And then just 9 days after that is the official peak of hurricane season, where we typically see a lot of areas of development, a lot of tropical storms, a lot of hurricanes. So that's what we'll be keeping our eyes peeled for, and it will be important to just kind of monitor it day by day. Make it a mission of or part of your daily routine to just check in with these potential areas of development. Okay, what are the chances of developing now? Has it formed into anything? Okay, it's formed into something. Let's send a question to the weather team. Let's see, do they have any spaghetti plots or any idea about it long range? And we'll be happy to let you know about that, given the sensitivity of everything that did happen last year with our hurricane season.